Yeah, so thank you, Sadiq, for a very lovely introduction. And yeah, I'm Emily, and I've come up from like the Devon Dorset border. Um, I'll speak a little bit about my story, but that in itself could be like a whole kind of session. So a very brief summary, and I think a lot of people in the kind of personal development space have been through lots of variations of their outward expression of their Dharma, of their purpose. So I actually started off at medical school in London. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and then I decided that wasn't the path for me. And quite quickly I realized that, but I knew that healing and yeah, helping people to feel well in some capacity was of interest to me. Um, at that time, I was also going through quite a lot of mental health difficulties, so I was seeking for certain answers. And I ended up moving down to Devon, to the seaside, which was amazing, and I love living there. And I started to live out one of my childhood dreams, which was to have a coffee shop. So I set up this small coffee shop, and that in itself was, in some ways, my version of inner child healing. Like it wasn't necessarily a deep dive into all of my childhood psychology, but it was like giving young Emily permission to live that dream of a coffee shop. Um, but we're always evolving, and dreams can also like shapeshift. And I realized, well, I knew I wanted to step into the learning of yoga and Ayurveda in a more kind of formal way because the principles had helped me a lot in the past. So I sold the coffee shop, went on the kind of classic journey to India that many seekers go on to do my yoga teacher training and to kind of deep dive into the more yeah, yoga and Ayurveda spiritual practices. And then over the last couple of years, that's what I've been teaching and sharing and working for Ayurveda Teacher Training School, which I've now stepped away from that work and I'm doing this full time. So that's been my personal journey to how I got into this room and into this topic. Um, so yeah, essentially today, what I wanted to do, the official title of the workshop, which I usually teach in a longer form, is called Dharma, Doshas, and Divine Intuition. And we're taking like the principles of Ayurveda and a little bit of yoga and kind of looking at like personal development, career development, understanding your version of truth and fusing those things together. So first of all, is what is Ayurveda? Um, because yeah, it's a word that lots of people have heard of, but don't always know what it means. So Ayurveda can be translated, can be broken down into two Sanskrit words. There's Aya, which is life, and Veda, which is wisdom. So essentially, Ayurveda is like the Indian philosophy of the wisdom of life. Um, so it's a pretty strong, pretty strong topic that can encompass many things. There's like, a whole kind of herb and treatment side of it. There's like the diet and lifestyle. There's devotion to God, even though it's not religious, like that kind of connection to spirit. So there's many different wings to the Ayurveda bird. Um, so that's Ayurveda. And then the second part, the Dharma, Dharma is also a Sanskrit word and it has many different interpretations, but essentially you can think of it as um, the thing that is like the cosmic law of order. So Dharma comes from the Sanskrit word dri, which means to sustain. So your Dharma, like your kind of purpose, is something that sustains you on all levels, like mind, body, and spirit. There's like a universal dharma which keeps the whole kind of universe, like global systems ticking and going in its way that it does. There's that universal cosmic dharma. And then we also have our individual dharma, like our unique personal expressions of that, which is our svadharma. Sva meaning like me or I, and dharma meaning the purpose. So it's almost like you've got this, yeah, this cosmic way of the world, and then we as individuals are expressing that in our own unique way, depending on what is our natural kind of personalities and tendencies. Does that make sense? Um, so we've got, so doshas we'll go into that, what that means a little bit later. So we've got doshas, which is part of Ayurveda, the Dharma, which is the purpose, and then the divine intuition, like what does that mean? So essentially, when we're working through like these practices of yoga and Ayurveda, whether it's through like meditation or physical practice of asana or like kind of purifying your diet and your lifestyle, like the whole purpose of why we're doing that, like it's not just so we like look really good on Hinge of like I go meditating every day at 6 a.m. It's so that we, yeah, you'll know. We're out there. That was my thought as well. Yeah. So, I mean, it looks great, but we're essentially, essentially, we are like, it is a system of purification. And that doesn't mean that you do everything perfectly all the time, but it means if we're removing the things that are causing us like imbalance or like misguidance through our own actions, then we're not going to feel and see clearly like what is our truth and what's our next steps because there's going to be so much kind of noise going on. So the divine intuition part is almost like the outcome of the practices of yoga and Ayurveda because then we can actually like hear what's going on and connect to that like God of our heart essentially. And you can only hear that when there's a certain level of like calm and clarity. Uh, so that is how these topics are all coming together. Okay. So one of the foundation parts of Ayurveda is something called the doshas. And this is essentially the way in which the elements exist within us. So there's kind of similar philosophies through like Chinese medicine and things like that. But in Ayurveda, you've got these three doshas, and they are vata, which is air and ether, pitta, which is fire, and kapha, which is earth and water. And just like the planet, we have all of these elements within us, but we have them in different variations, like what's the word? Different proportions. So some people might be having a higher pitta dosha. They might be kind of naturally more fiery. Some people might be higher in their vata, in their air kind of energy, naturally more sort of creative. Kapha, the earth and water, tend to be very kind of like nurturing, loving people. If you think about the whole kind of Mother Earth analogy, that sums up Kapha dosha pretty well. So you've got these three doshas. We have all of them within us in different proportions, and then that's what makes us who we are as like individual, unique beings. And the word for your unique kind of constitution is called your prakriti, and that essentially translates as like your original nature. So when again we're trying to like bring ourselves back to our prakriti, to our original nature, we're not trying to change if we're a fiery person or not. Like that's part of you. Like if you're high pitta, it's not a bad thing. It's just trying to find like a balanced version of that fire. I always say like it's good to be fiery, but you don't want to burn down the whole town. It's like how can we use that in the healthiest version of itself? Uh, so to understand like the qualities of these three doshas and then to maybe like recognize them within yourself in terms of you know you don't want to get too attached to labels of like I'm a pitta because it can change, but to have a little bit of understanding of where you might sit. So if someone was high in vata element, in the air and ether element, their sort of natural characteristics in terms of their personality, like it's sort of quite self-explanatory. If you think about an airy person, you can imagine they're like got all these creative ideas coming in, but they're also possibly quite disorganized, like running around here and there, can't really focus on any one thing, or maybe they're changing careers like every 6 months or every 1 year. It's like commitment can be hard because they've got this high air element, like the wind, they're always moving. But at the same time, that dynamic side can also be really fun and really interesting and exciting and kind of like quite bubbly, bubbly, creative people. So it's actually sometimes it's easier to like spot to look to look at other people and see what you think they are, because in ourselves we can convince ourselves of everything, right? We're like, I'm not grounded. Huh? You're high pitta. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think Sadiq is so we have all three within us, but I'd say he's high in pitta, and then I think his second one is kapha because he is a very like loving, giving person, which is a kapha kind of trait. So, well, we'll get onto more of the pitta traits in a second. So yeah, Vata, you've got the kind of like the creative, possibly non-committal, dynamic, loves to travel, loves to change, often loves quite extreme things, because sometimes they can feel a bit disconnected because they're so in their kind of like spacey, airy element that it can be actually hard to realize when they like need to like rest or when they're going from one extreme to the other. So sometimes people with Vata, they're like full power and then they're exhausted. It's like, okay, oh my God, I'm gonna do everything, and then I need to just lie down and be in a cave at home. I can't cope with it. So they're quite a extreme sign of up and downs, but very dynamic and creative. Then when it comes to Pitta's personality traits, so this is the fire sign. These people tend to be like natural leaders, quite determined, quite disciplined, quite like competitive, either with others or with themselves. So like, if you're really into the gym and you're like, oh, you're really good at like having your routine and you just get things done, like you're gonna boss it, you've got that firepower, that's like a pitta trait. But on the kind of flip side of that, like that's obviously really great traits to have. But if your pitta's going a bit out of balance, then there can be like a lot of anger, irritability, like you can be prone to like the confidence going into ego, like, ego inflation. It's that constant line between the healthy sort of elements of the fire and then the like less balanced one. So pitta's determined, but yeah, it's got to keep the egos in check. Um, then with Kapha, which is the earth and the water, so people who are high in Kapha, they tend to be, yeah, like very loving, very nurturing, kind of like that mothering energy, which doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be a mother. Um, they tend to be quite like they like comfort, like, and love the kind of homely routine, family, friends, like they know what's going on. And yeah, very kind of like the kind of friend that you'll come round, they'll like cook you dinner, get you all cozy and settled, and yeah, very nurturing. But at the same time, that kind of kapha stability can often then become too stable. Like it's easy to get stuck in your routine, and then you suddenly really hate change. You don't really want to go out, like you're a little bit too comfortable, and that earth element literally becomes like a active manifestation of like grounded, literally. So yeah, if you're someone who's got high kapha, you have to kind of make sure that you're self-motivating to keep things dynamic so that you don't get stuck in what you're doing. Um, the different doshas also have like physical manifestations, which if you're looking more from kind of the Ayurvedic medicine and healing side, like there's different kind of disease tendencies with each dosha, which I won't go into heavily because we're talking more about like mindset and career and stuff. But essentially, pitta related disorders are anything to do with sort of like fire. So you can imagine like angry skin, like acne, or indigestion, like acid reflux, all these kinds of things, infection. These are all quite like fiery diseases. Um, Whereas Vata, because this is an air energy, tends to be like pain-related diseases or dryness-related diseases. So like eczema, constipation, cracking joints, painful joints, and also most mental health disorders, especially things like anxiety, are Vata-related because you've got like a lot of movement in your mind. So that's Vata, Pitta, Kapha, because it's earth and water. Um, a lot of the kind of tendencies in terms of health would be like struggling to lose weight because you're literally like it's a holding dosha, you're holding space for others, and then sometimes that ends up holding like water and holding weight within you, or like bloating or water related symptoms like phlegm, mucus, pneumonia, that type of thing. So each of the doshas have their disease tendencies. And so if you went to see an Ayurvedic doctor with a certain, like if you had acne and you went there, they would say, okay, maybe your pitta is too high, and we need to look at how to bring your pitta back into balance, into its healthy expression. Yeah. So do you guys, do you kind of start to see some tendencies within yourself? Yeah.
It's funny enough because we had a conversation the other day about poor turbulence. Yeah. So it's like it's really linked to that. So I don't know. It's like that's just learning way.
Mm.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's just yeah, this is the thing with Ayurveda, like it is a holistic science, but at the same time when you hear it, you could you can see it. Like you can see it in yourself, you can see it in other people. And I think one thing that's important when we're talking about the doshas is like we're not trying to make them all equal. We're not all trying to become the same prakriti, the same constitution. It's just nurturing a healthy expression of those particular doshas that you have within you, and you have and you have all of them. And so it's not like you're not a loving person if you're high in pitta, like you've still got kapha within you. It's just your tendency might be towards pitta related either health issues or personality traits. So we're looking at bringing about the healthiest expression of that. Okay, where are we at? Cool. Okay, so when we are going through this system of like self-purification to uncover like what is our truth, how can we connect to the God of our heart, there's the main thing that's going to stop us is going to be our mind, because the mind gets clouded by all these different influences. And there's various things that can cloud the mind, and that's what, if we're approaching kind of like the next steps in life or career from this perspective, that we need to look at. Like one is the dosha imbalances that I've just talked about. Like if certain ones are unhealthy expressions, do you need to work on changing your diet, your lifestyle to bring yourself back into a balance from your doshas? The other thing is your samskaras, and this is like the Sanskrit word for essentially like your impressions that you've picked up through life. So a little bit like psychotherapy, essentially, looking at your childhood, looking at the things that have influenced you to this place in life now, like what samskaras are you carrying, and can you look at them and can you, determine if they're still true to who you are as like a adult functioning human today, mainly functioning, mainly adult. So we're looking at the doshas, we're looking at our samskaras. Um, we're also looking at our karma, which if you don't believe in past lives, it's also it's fine, but so you can interpret karma as how well can you learn the lessons that are being presented to you. So like whether you feel they came from a past life or whether you feel they came from this life, like I interpret karma as like you get shown things on your path, and it's like can I learn from this, or am I just going to ignore it? And then when it comes back around in a year, you're like, oh, damn it, didn't this, like, haven't we been here before? So this is how I feel karma can be kind of interpreted like in this way. So yeah, looking at your karma, looking at the doshas, and the final thing is, as well as the doshas, there's like these energies in the world called the mahagunas, and there are three of them because Ayurveda likes things in three. There's well, then you'll love this topic. So there's Rajas, which is like the energy of stimulation and activity. Um, there's Tamas, which is the energy of like lethargy. And then there's Sattva, which is the energy of like peace and harmony. And so these energies are going on all around us, inside us, in different foods, in different activities. So we can kind of like look at our actions and look at what we're putting in our body or our life situation according to these mahagunas. So, for example, like if you're like coming home and sitting on the sofa and becoming like full caterpillar in the blanket every day, this is the energy of tamas, of lethargy. And if you stay in that too long, then you're going to become out of balance. Similarly, if like every day you're drinking like monster drink, going for a hit workout, then like being super stimulated all evening, this is rajas, and this is like overstimulation, and that's going to have its own imbalances. And then obviously if we all meditate in a cave every day and follow sattva, we'll be just fine. Um, but no, we don't. Sorry. No. But it's essentially, yeah, we don't have to meditate in a cave, but it's like looking at our influences and just understanding like cause and effect of what we're doing, what's the energy that's being put into us, what we're putting into ourselves, and looking at the effect of that. So that's kind of the from the Ayurvedic and yogic perspective, the things that would cloud the mind to help you to prevent you from taking the next steps. I'm gonna have a drink of water. Mm. Rajas, tamas, and sattva. Yeah. There's quite a lot of yoga schools called like Sattva Yoga Academy and things like that.
A takeaway so we can take stuff away.
Yeah, I haven't got it with me, but I'll email it to you. I've got one, but I've it's got my yeah. It's a lot of new words. Yeah. I'll send it to you, and I've got like a more of like a dosha chart as well with the full kind of breakdown of like the different tendencies of the different doshas. So I'll send it to you. Seeing as you guys made the effort to come, I'll email it to you so that you can have a look. So the kind of like final part then of this talk would be okay, so we're looking at the doshas and we're understanding a little bit about our natural tendencies. So how does that relate to either like project development or business development? Or if you're not kind of in that field, how can this just relate to like myself and choosing a path that's going to be optimized for like who I am as a natural human? And with these doshas, with the vata, the air, pitta, fire, kapha, earth, and water, you can like approach the kind of I guess yeah, business development or project planning phase through this lens because you've got the vata stage, which is like the air element. So this is your ideation. This is where you're like visualizing, you're brainstorming, you're getting all the inspirational downloads. You're very much in like the air energy for that stage. But if you don't take any action, you just get stuck in air. You have loads of ideas, but you just stay in your head the whole time. So, like, once you've had your vata, your air ideation phase, you have to take some form of action, even if it's not like the full grand plan, but we have to take some kind of action to then move us into the next stage, which is the pitta stage, the fire stage, or the execution stage. Like, this is essentially where we're trying things out, we're setting the momentum, and we're kind of putting all the plans into action. But similarly, and that's necessary, obviously, to see how it goes. But if we get stuck in the pitta phase, then we can get burnt out because you're just action, action, action all the time. You're like, I've got the plan, I've been working 24 hours a day for a month, and like you're just actioning, but you then need to move into the kapha stage, which is this kind of nurturing stage where it's your time for like reflection and evaluation of whether all that action that happened in the pitta stage was actually, like financially successful or even just what you wanted in the first place. Like, how did that relate to the ideas that came up in the vata stage? So you need that kapha, that like nurturing sort of reflective time to think about what's happened. And then you'll go back into the vata stage for like the next kind of ideation process, and then the pitta and then the kapha. So as well as the doshas relating to us as human beings in our own personal lives, we can look at it from like the kind of project planning, life moving forward kind of view. And then the final part that I want to talk about is there's different kind of careers or roles that each dosha or each dosha is going to be more drawn towards. And there's almost like these kind of archetypes that can come through. Like you've got people who are nurturers, like if they're high in kapha, they're probably going to either they're going to want to like care for people, or they're going to want to like create using their hands. So like in gardening or like something artistic, but more like clay making or baking, something that's with the hands, or counseling, like literal care jobs, nursery school teacher, like anything that's sort of a care role is going to be naturally, if you're a kapha, you're drawn to that. Same with chefs, because they're unless they're a really angry chef, they might be a bit bitter, a bit bitter. Gordon Ramsay, I don't really know if he's like a. But if you're, if you're natural, like if you love to cook meals for people, if you've got that within you, that also kind of comes under this like nurturer archetype. Um, so exploring sort of possibilities in that avenue, or even not as a career, like if you don't know what is the next step, just doing something within those themes, even if it's voluntary, even if it's for like your friends, that's going to almost like emphasize in a really positive way those kapha traits within you, and you're going to feel more like yourself because you're doing things that are like optimum for your prakriti, for your original nature. Then with Pitta, with that kind of fire, these people tend to be more under the archetype of like entrepreneur or like yeah, sort of leadership management type roles. So they're going to thrive when they've got like something that they can really you know like sink their teeth into in terms of a project. So choosing work that's kind of like activating that like warrior leader um, type role is going to make them feel more like themselves. Um, so looking for sort of like anything that's involved in that field will be helpful. Then when it comes to Vata, like the creative, beautiful, flowy people, like it makes sense that people like that would be looking for creative work, or even work that isn't going to put them in a box of doing the same thing every day, that's not going to make them feel stuck. So like it doesn't necessarily have to be like an actual artist, but maybe even, if you're in a startup company and you get to do lots of different things, that's going to make a Vata person very happy. The only thing with Vata is because of the kind of airy nature. If you know you're someone who easily goes out of balance with your Vata dosha, you have to keep that like grounded home routine, so that if your work is really creative and all over the place, it's super important to like nurture yourself at home. And same with like a kapha person, if your work is like sitting down and you're like creating this amazing pot for like 10 hours, then you need to make sure your home life is dynamic to counter that natural sort of kapha tendency to like root really deeply. So I think like the takeaway kind of points from all of these different words and informations that I've said today is essentially we are trying to uncover our true nature through the practices of yoga, ayurveda, understanding our prakriti. And then once we understand our prakriti, it's learning how to make decisions that are going to keep us in that optimized state, so that we can essentially make choices that are going to make us feel great, and also like use our individual gifts to the ruined my end. Use your individual gifts like to the highest service of yourself and therefore of others. So namaste. Thank you.